This week's episode of the e-flux podcast features Karl Holmqvist in conversation with Anton Vidokle. It begins with a 10-minute reading by Holmqvist of Another War is Possible and concludes with a reading of Numbers.
You are listening to the e-flux podcast.
Another war is possible. Ratata. Words versus words. Another war is possible. Ratat. Words versus words. Deal with your demons. Make up your soul. 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 Make up your soul. Deal with your demons. Make up your soul. Deal with your demons. Make up your soul. Another war is possible. 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 Ratata. Another war is possible. Another war is possible. Inner war. Deal with your demons, make up your soul. What if your vision is only destruction? Rebel leaders rarely make good leaders once the liberation struggle is won. Ego war, raw war, another war is possible. Another war is possible. Another war is possible. Another war is possible. Inner war. Deal with your demons. Make up your soul. 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 Settle the score. Another war is possible. Another war is possible. Another war is possible. Another war is possible. Inner war. Sacred war. Roly-holy over war is all over overall if we want it. Roly-holy over war is all over overall if we want it. Roly-holy over war is all over overall if we want it. Roly-holy over war is all over overall if we want it. Roly-holy over over, war is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war is all over, overall. If we want it, it's all over, overall. It's all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus. The weeping wall inside us all is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus. Clown torture. The weeping wall inside us all is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus. The weeping wall inside us all is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus. Inner war. The weeping wall inside us all is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus. The weeping wall inside us all is all over, overall. If we want it, roly holy over, war. A circus. The weeping wall inside us all is all over, overall. If we want it, if we want it, is overall, is overall, all overall. If we want it, is overall, all over. 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 If we want it, is overall, all over, lover. If we want it, is over, all over. If we want it, is over, all lover. 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 If we want it, if we want it, is over, all lover. 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 Is over, all lover. Is over, all lover. If we want it.
Great. It's really amazing. Put me in a trance. You were starting to tell me yesterday about, I think you said it was like 1998 or something, you came to New York and you kind of first encountered...
89.
89. Oh my God. Yes. I reversed it in my head. Yeah. Yeah. And you first started going to poetry readings here with this poetry project. Was already going then?
Yeah. There was the Village Voice printed on paper. And there would be listings about what was going on every day in New York. And I would see there was a lot of poetry readings at the Pyramid Club. ABC No Rio was maybe later, but there was always kind of a number of places hosting poetry readings. And I was kind of surprised by this. I was kind of like, why are New Yorkers so fond of poetry? But
this wasn't the case in Stockholm, or
not the same way, no. So I was curious. I wanted to check it out, and then I went there, and there would usually be a featured reader, someone like Eileen Miles or different people, and then there would be like open mic list you could sign up after and read whatever you wanted to read and whatever you had brought along, and so I started to do that, and that's somehow the beginning of how I started to do the kind of spoken word readings, and I was also interested in the kind of situation of exchange, that there was no longer an audience, like everyone was somehow, because sometimes there was only like 20 people in the room, and in the end we were all up on stage at some point, and I still have kind of a big fascination for spoken word or karaoke or wherever, when people choose to somehow reveal themselves or make some kind of spoken or singing performance on stage, and they kind of show somehow who they are through what they're saying, but also through how they're talking and the quality of their voice, and things like this, and this is always quite interesting to me.
Just out of curiosity, what kind of work were you doing before? I actually don't know this.
Yeah, in the 80s, like when I started to work actually with video, and I was making some kind of film collages, and then I would start to put subtitles, and I was making voiceovers, and little by little the images kind of disappeared, and I was more and more just working with the voiceover, and so I was already writing, but the idea of performance and performing in front of people was maybe something that I had done it before, but it was something that somehow came from moving to New York and being here.
I guess another parallel to this is performance art, which was also something quite important in New York scene, I guess, in the late 80s, still caught a sort of a certain kind of trail edge of a proliferation in performance art practices in the 70s and early 80s, no?
Yeah, I mean, there was also somehow some kind of art market crash, late 80s.
Right, exactly.
And early 90s, there was a kind of return to performative practices and scatter art and sort of Fluxus-inspired exhibitions, making something out of nothing and writing on the walls and stuff like this. And I kind of got caught up in the middle of all that and was also starting to do my readings more in a kind of art context and it somehow became a kind of performance artist in the process. And I never had literary ambitions, really. I was always interested in language and in wordplay and in experimenting with words. and I somehow call it poetry because you need to call it something. But it was always something that was somehow part of it, some kind of artistic practice.
But were you also aware at the time of this whole like tradition of modernist sort of futurist poetry, concrete poetry, all of that?
Yeah, I mean, it's things I kind of explored through my practice through the years. I don't know exactly what I was aware of at that point, but I mean, there's always also kind of been the kind of idea of the stage performance, and I was more kind of maybe, and I was somehow making my own spoken words versions of Donna Summer and Tina Turner and Mariah Carey. I mean, I was always kind of quite aware of how there are kind of how there is a music industry, and how there are kind of performers that have this kind of mega fame, and kind of comparing oneself to that as a kind of performance artist, and then the kind of minimal interest and audience reach you usually have, and kind of how music stars or movie stars or any kind of star is usually kind of you have images and the kind of anonymity that sort of comes with being an artist, and kind of comparing what is this stage performance compared to that one, and also the idea of celebrity and fame, and the kind of things that sort of have always been interesting to me, and also if you kind of go back to something like Fluxus or even Dada, there was also always this idea that we're doing something that anyone could do. There should be this kind of directness to what you're doing, and it's just you have thought about it and the other guy hasn't. And also staying with the kind of simplicity of materials and expression, and sort of discovering how far, exploring how far this can take you.
And this kind of idea of repetition, almost sampling-like sensibility, a kind of breaking of syntax. Where does all of this come from for you?
Well, I mean, there is definitely a kind of trance moment to it, but also putting you in a trance, or whoever is listening, and maybe even myself, but also a kind of obsessiveness, and there's also Gertrude Stein or experimental writing like that, and an idea of kind of staying in the moment, repeating something, but each time you somehow say it, you're saying it in the moment, so you're kind of actually not repeating because you're saying it again for the first time each time you say it. And popular music also has a lot of repetition. I mean, this is how they somehow manage to make song lyrics stay in your head, and the way things are also repeating in memory, and the kind of obsessiveness of that, and also somehow there's a kind of this idea of the earworm, that somehow you always get the lyrics you don't want to remember repeating in your head, and kind of disturbing you, or kind of interrupting your flow of thoughts.
You know what it also makes me think of, particularly the way you read, a little bit of, it makes me think of like religious incantations and all sorts of kind of ritualistic ways of speaking. Mm-hmm. But I think a lot of them are very instrumental, for example, in witchcraft, this idea that certain kind of utterances repeated or said in a very particular way, repeated a certain amount of times, would produce a material effect in the world, Mm-hmm. Or, for example, more of, let's say, like a Catholic Christian idea of repeating rosary a million times would actually somehow have an effect on your relationship with the divinity and will absolve you of a certain kind of a sin. That you could actually make up for something by repeating certain kind of sentences.
Yeah. I'm also thinking of someone like Burroughs and the idea of cut-ups, and I mean, he's also someone who's talking about how you sort of manipulate the word through destroying language and rearranging language, and there is definitely a kind of magical. I think there's a kind of magical dimension to language in general, and we still don't really know how exactly we understand each other when we talk, and or if we do, or how we misunderstand each other, and he's also somehow talking about somehow rearranging reality through the rearrangement of language and ideas of nonlinear language and having words resound, like having words take on other meanings or other levels of meaning, maybe. I don't know. I mean, it's as I said, and it's an experimental work, and it's kind of quite individual, I think, what you actually experience, and it's not something that I'm consciously manipulating, as far as I'm aware. Maybe I should.
A couple of years ago, I needed to use a couple of fragments from Mayakovsky in an essay or something I was writing, or a timeline of something, a kind of more of a historical thing. And I was looking at the English translations, and they were actually quite lame, because he is using a kind of a futurist language, creating a lot of words that probably don't quite even exist in Russian. And of course, this is incredibly difficult to translate. So I tried to actually translate it myself, and in the process, and these were very short fragments, this, maybe like 10, 11 sentences each, and just kind of trying to translate them a little bit more faithfully or better, I kind of suddenly realized that literally every word has a kind of a quite complex history in terms of its relationship to biographical aspects of his life, various cultural usage of this term, how it relates to other kind of stories, tradition, histories, and things like that. So suddenly a poem which I've read before, mainly with a kind of like maybe aesthetical interest or something like that, but suddenly I realized that this is almost like some kind of a matrix where every single word has multiplicity of meanings, and they're arranged in such a particular order. It's almost like an abyss opened up, and it was kind of infinite. And in the end, it took like forever to translate accurately quite a short passage, Just from this perspective, for example, what you read right now, can you talk a little bit about, because there are very specific sentences that you're using. As you mentioned before, there is a reference to Yoko Ono, there is a reference to Roly Poly Over and Cage, and other things. So maybe it could be interesting to just, if you wanted to speak a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of, in a way, the way you listen to it, it's about entering your thoughts, entering your mind, and staying in your memory, repeating in your head. So this is why it's being repeated, but it's also somehow expressing or vocalizing what's in my head and things I kind of think about and obsess about, and so there's a kind of weaving of words and trying to get it not to be too smart, because like the flow of thoughts is not like if you write the academic essay, you need to edit yourself a lot, because the way we think is not that clever. I mean, there's a kind of flow of thoughts where all kinds of things you can associate through words that are similar, or through their content, or I mean, there's different ways of doing that. But yeah, in Another War is Possible, there is Another World is Possible, which was a kind of early 90s slogan for imagining a different way of...
Is this somehow related to World Social Forum and what Immanuel Wallerstein, right?
Yeah.
That was his sentence, no? Or,
yeah.
or a book title even. Or...
Yeah, and it was something that was on T-shirts and on signs in demonstrations and just kind of bringing about, it seems like a very long time ago, a kind of optimism and a kind of idea of reorganizing the world internationally and getting rid of inequalities. And there was a moment there of, but of course it's a stupid wordplay, just making world into a war and talking about this idea of another war being possible. But it's actually somehow the idea of holy war. And is that actually a war against other people, or against other nations, or is it a war that you have with yourself in terms of your own person? And this is where we get to the inner war and how you somehow is supposed to take care of your demons and sort of make yourself a better person. And then it shifts over to Yoko Ono, John Lennon talking about war is over if you want it. And then it rolls on into John Cage and Roly Holy War, over war, Roly Holy War.
What is a Roly Holy?
That's a circus. It was right after he died, actually. Whenever this was, John Cage, they made a kind of exhibition of his notes and his musical annotation, and that was the title of the exhibition.
I see.
Yeah, a kind of multimedia investigation into the Cage cosmos. Is that everything?
And then the lover came in.
Yeah, because it's all over, and then it's an old lover, not an old lover, but an old lover, someone who loves everything, which is, I guess, another kind of utopian idea, but also something that we should somehow aspire to and fight for within our own person somehow.
Karl, do you write in Swedish as well?
There are some sentences. This is also, mentioning where all these different things are coming from is also somehow important in relation to my writing method, because a lot of the writing I do is quotes from different places. And basically I think of my writing as a type of collage where you sort of take different bits and pieces from different places and put them together and have them form a new, different meaning in that sense. And it's not, I'm not trying to, find something extremely obscure, even though maybe these things that we're talking about are quite obscure. But I don't know, it's meant for you as a listener to be able to sort of recognize where something is coming from. And this is also why I kind of enjoy using music lyrics and having things come from quite mainstream sources. And Sweden is a small country, so there's not many people who could kind of catch up on phrases in Swedish, but I have been using some phrases, and it's kind of funny also to kind of interrupt this flow of English with just a phrase that just sounds like Swedish. It's also kind of funny,
for example,
funny sounding language.
It is funny sounding. I quite like the way Swedish sounds. Yeah.
Alla barn ska ha rätt till en mamma och pappa.
It's very sing-song. What does this mean?
Every child should have access to a mother and a father. It's a kind of Christian democratic leader who's talking against gay marriage and gay having the rights to adopt children. And in a way he's right, but on the other hand, like, who knows? And even if a child doesn't have access to both their parents, maybe it's not... maybe it can still have a happy childhood. I don't know. But
it's a slightly fascistic quote, actually.
Yeah, and it's just in the middle of a flow of other things going on. And there's also some French, which I speak. I live in Germany. I don't really speak German, but I use some German quotes and some Italian, some Japanese, two languages that I don't speak. So yeah, there is this idea of the collage and of weaving different things. And there's references to machine guns. The rat-a-tat-tat-tat is actually from Marinetti and from the Futurists, quite aggressive poetry from before the First World War. And once the First World War came, I mean, they were kind of notorious, and once the war came, they weren't so popular anymore because people realized this war is not actually a very attractive thing.
But it didn't dissuade fascists, no? They actually wanted to repeat it.
Yeah, and so there's also Ezra Pound in there. It's a kind of a complicated weave, actually, that I was putting together for the Venice Biennial in 2011. There was a kind of big wall drawing that had all these kind of machine gun noises and different inputs from different places. And Pound is, of course, enormously complicated, but also enormously inspiring, and the kind of multiple language and the popular language aspects and the mixing of that is coming from him, and via then Kraftwerk, how they would always kind of repeat their phrases first in English or first in German, and then in English and in French, and then Russian or Japanese, and so they have this poem called Numbers, where they're just kind of counting in different languages, and so am I, and you kind of get a kind of more rhythmic and mathematical sense of what language can be.
So as I'm listening to you, I mentioned to you that this morning I just completely accidentally came across this whole astrolinguistics thing.
Right.
Yes, and all of these attempts since about 100 years ago to create a new language like Esperanto, in a sense that the real goal behind Esperanto was actually a pacifist goal. It was to stop wars, because
right.
The idea of the founder was that if everybody could speak to everybody, there would be no conflict or military conflict. Everything would be resolved discursively. And then there is this other language which is invented a few years later, maybe a decade later, in 1919, by these two Russian brothers who come from the same town as the inventor of Esperanto, which they call AO, which is the first language developed to communicate with extraterrestrial intelligence. So this would be like interplanetary language to communicate with the rest of the universe, let's say a truly universal language. And of course, it doesn't stop there, because then I found out that there was another language invented in the 50s and 60s and 70s. So this attempt to create some kind of a universalist language of communication with the totality of the universe is a kind of an ongoing project, and of course, the interesting thing about the Russian example of it, this AO language, it was largely based on Russian futurist poetry, So we're talking about Khlebnikov, Kruchenikh, all of these kind of radical experimental poets of, 1920s and the decade previous to that. But their goals maybe in a way were quite similar to Italian futurists. It was a really kind of a radical attempt to change the world, to change human mentality, to change social structure, to have a completely radical transformation of society through language, When you work now, the sensibility is almost like it's a mirroring of popular culture, mirroring of media, mirroring of popular music, Is there, but is there still this kind of a utopian attempt to produce a kind of a radical change, or do you think is it possible?
It's definitely possible, and I think the poet's use of language is somehow a kind of antidote to kind of journalistic use of language or linear storytelling use of language or political propaganda or this kind of idea of a kind of specific goal. I think the goal for poetry would be somehow some kind of telepathic communication. I think that you kind of.
But what about sound?
I mean, going back to this, what we talked from the beginning of the idea of the poetry reading, with where everyone is somehow reading to each other. I mean, there's a kind of exchange in the moment, and you kind of create a kind of listening situation where you actually want to listen to what someone is saying, and you're kind of trying to understand them, and so there's no disagreement because there's no definite statement. It's kind of up in the air. I mean, you can talk about good or bad, but in general, even if someone is a bad writer, he can still sort of be a good performer, and a good reading of something can always kind of save it, even if it's not that well written. And I mean, there's a whole kind of discussion around this, and real poets, they kind of look down on two good performers, because then you're kind of having it, and you're not actually working on the page, and you're supposed to, I mean, if you talk about modernist poetry, and yeah. But I think this is from T.S. Eliot, no? When he's saying, I have to use words when I'm talking to you, or is it from a pop song? Or, I mean, there's a kind of sense that actual understanding, like the way you understand a lover, or so you intimately understand someone, is basically telepathically, and we just need to get rid of the differences. And I don't think it's a question of just getting one language. I think it's a question of somehow harmonizing ourselves as beings, and just kind of having confidence in the different types of people that we have on this planet.
I think this is a very good place to end, a beautiful place.
But I thought maybe it's nice to read this numbers, since we were talking about that, and just adding a kind of idea of infinite dimension to words that is not usually there, like a story begins somewhere and ends with a kind of conclusion where you understand what the person is trying to tell you. And the same would go normally for an article in the newspaper. And a poem is maybe something different. And there is a kind of mathematical, numerological dimension to the way you write in poetry. I'm trying to find the thing I wanted to read now. This is numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. Ich, ni, san, shi. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. Ich, ni, san, shi. 1, 2, 3. Time, money, entertainment, travel. It's more fun to compute. 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. Time, money, entertainment, travel. Time, money, entertainment, travel. It's more fun to compute. Interpol, Deutsche Bank, FBI, and Scotland Yard. Interpol, Deutsche Bank, FBI, and Scotland Yard show some feelings and respect. It's more fun to compute. It's more fun to compute. 1, 2. It's more fun to compute. It's more fun to compute. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Ich, ni, san, shi. Ich, ni, san, shi. 1, 2. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? 1, 2. It's more fun to compute. It's more fun to compute. 1, 2. Interpol, Deutsche Bank, FBI, and Scotland Yard. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? 1, 2, CIA and KGB. It's more fun to compute. It's more fun to compute. 1, 2. It's more fun to compute. It's more fun to compute. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ich, ni, shan, shi. 1, 2, 3. Ich, ni, shan, shi. 1, 2, 3. Time, money, entertainment, travel, surveillance. Time, money, entertainment, travel, surveillance. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? 1, 2. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2. One holds the ladder and one screws. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ich, ni, san, shi. 1, 2, 3, 4. Ich, ni, san, shi. 1, 2. 1, 2, 3. Interpol, Deutsche Bank, FBI, and Scotland Yard. Interpol, Deutsche Bank, FBI, and Scotland Yard. Time, money, entertainment, travel. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? It's more fun to compute. It's more fun to compute. It's more fun to compute. How many gays you need? It's more fun to compute. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? 3. 2 fuck each other and 1 screws. 1 is no fun. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. The we decade, century of the self. 1, 2, 3, 4. The we decade, century of the self. Ich, ni, san, shi. The we decade, century of the self. Can you count to 2? The we decade, century of the self. The we decade, century of the self. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. The we decade, century of the self. The we decade, century of the self. Can you count to 2? The we decade, century of the self. Ich, ni, san, shi. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. Century of the self. How many gays you need? 1, 2, 3, 4. Century of the self. How many gays you need? 1 is no fun. Show some feelings and respect. 1, 2, 3. It's more fun to compute. 1, 2, 3, 4. Century of the self. How many gays you need? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? 2. 1 holds the ladder and 1 screws. How many gays you need to screw in a light bulb? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 4 equals group hug. How many gays you need? 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 1, 2. It's more fun to compute. 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 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Can you count to 2? It's more fun to compute. 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 1, 2, and live and learn. It's more fun to compute and live and learn. Interpol, Deutsche Bank, FBI, and live and learn, and Scotland Yard, CIA and KGB, time, money, entertainment, travel, surveillance, 1, 2, and live and learn, and live and learn, 1, 2, and live and learn, and live and learn, and live and learn. 1, 2, and live and learn, 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 and live and learn.
Thank you so much, Karl.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.